Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rubin Museum of Art. This is where, through our collection of Buddhist art from the Himalayas, we attempt to open windows on our inner world so we can better navigate the outer one. My name is Tim McHenry. I'm Director of Programs and Partnerships here at the Rubin. I'd just also like to say welcome to everybody viewing us on Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in to this, the second conversation in our series, The Power of Non-Conformity. And the title of tonight's conversation is Investing in Letting Go. And one of our speakers, Bijan Sabet, has very successfully invested in the business world. He's a co-founder and general partner of Spark Capital, and he's invested in some companies you may or may not have heard of, like Twitter, Tumblr, anyone, Foursquare, Trello, Runkeeper. And so he's done quite well from some of his decisions. But what does invest actually mean? Invest sort of really means putting your money where your mouth is, making a commitment. And if we look at the origin of the word, however, investiture, that means clothing something with meaning and giving it import, sort of knighting something, you know. It's a sign of confidence. So what if you divest yourself of all those outward trappings? What happens then? Well, as we learn from the Vedas, the ancient Indian teachings, space happens when you have a body, and time begins when you start thinking. And causation begins when you apply limitations. To drop beneath all thought is a radical act. And it's an act committed probably every other second by our other speaker, the renowned philosopher and spiritual master Yogishri, who's here with us tonight. Yogishri started his spiritual path at a very young age, but he also maneuvered into the business world and yet turned his back on it and sought guidance from some of the great masters in the Himalayas, and then re-entered our world in order to impart those learnings through his organization Infinite Wings, so that we could all get to learn how to maybe live life a little more richly and finely, and with greater compassion. And he's also tutored some business leaders in his time. So we thought it would be interesting if Yogishri and Bijan Sabet could join each other in conversation to, I don't know, maybe talk about the meaning of life for about an hour and a half. Would that do it? That might sound like a radical act to some of you. Well, that's what the Rubin's about. So let's welcome Bijan Sabet and Yogishri to the stage. Please, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'm delighted to be here. This is my first time at the Rubin. I live in Boston. I've heard about the Rubin for a long time, so it's a pleasure to be here. And obviously, it's a big pleasure to speak with you, Yogishri, so it's an honor. So I'm really looking forward to this. We just met for the first time a few moments ago. So I still feel like I've got a million questions. I'm going to try to fit them all in as best as I can. And we're certainly going to leave time for some of you to ask questions, I hope, as well. So I think one of the things that just a very quick intro on some of the questions I've been asking. As I mentioned to Yogishri in the back room here, I started out my professional career without any money or resources. I was married very young. I was engaged at 23. I was married at 25. We had, I think, $1,000 in our combined savings account and checking account. That was all the money we had, and then shortly after that we had children. I'm still married, by the way. I'm 24 years married, And but for the first 10 years of this journey, I had heads down, and I didn't ask any questions about the meaning of life. It was just work. I have to make a confession. I'll start with something vulnerable. I missed the day my daughter was born. I was so busy working. I was there for the birth, but I went right back to work. It's one of my biggest regrets in my life. Then, years later, I started asking questions and more questions and more questions. And so I've been practicing meditation for the last several years. I've been working with people that have a lot of special experience in Vipassana. And anyway, this is all led me to this evening. So I'm going to start with a question that I've been thinking about, which is why do so many people struggle with happiness?
Good evening, Bijan. Good evening, everyone. So your question is, why do people struggle with happiness? See, the first thing is, nobody knows what happiness is. Happiness is today found in the dictionary. And that too nobody refers to, The thing is that everyone is chasing for happiness outside. If you see a child playing with toys, now why is a child playing with toys? Because it wants to be more happy. And then as we grow old, as we grow in life, we keep changing the toys. From a rattle, probably we may take up a bicycle. Then from a bicycle, we take up something else. And when we become a young adult, we try to deal with a lot of wealth. I don't mean you in particular, I mean generally. Mm-hmm. So we dabble with so many things, all with the hope of becoming happy. But what the ancient wisdom says, because I have dedicated my life towards that, what it says is that actually the happiness is not there. It comes through stilling of one's own mind. Because whenever we want something in life, our mind gets agitated. I don't have that. Until I have that, I will not be happy. So we try to use the objects of the world in order to still our minds. But that doesn't work, because the moment we experience one thing, immediately we change the object. We want something else. I'm not saying it's wrong, but we need to understand how the mind is working. So what I discovered from the great masters is that there is a way by which we can still our minds without any object. And that is by connecting to the infinite. And once you do that, you don't look for happiness outside. You're permanently happy, you're in a state of happiness. That state is called, in Sanskrit there's a word called Ananda. Ananda means bliss. It's, you can't even control it. It's always there. Whether you have something, whether you don't have something. So you may acquire wealth, you may acquire name and fame, all these are fine. But if you're going to do it with the idea of becoming happy, it's impossible. So there was a German philosopher, his name was Schopenhauer. He also said the same thing. He said you can never find, it's no doubt difficult to find happiness within, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else, he said. So the problem today is that we tend to escape from ourselves. We are trying to seek for that everywhere outside. And that's the reason the struggle is there.
Yeah.
And the day we understand, you were talking about meditation. The most interesting thing is meditation is actually not a practice. Meditation is something like sleep, You can't practice sleeping. Probably another half an hour, many here may fall off to sleep. I don't know. It's a natural process. but you can make things conducive for sleeping. Similarly, meditation is something which is very natural. You got to slide into that state. And that's what we yogis have discovered, So you must have heard of a sage called Patanjali, who's in the West. He has become very famous because they've taken up the physical aspect of what he taught and they call it yoga. Now, he defines yoga itself as, stilling the mind. And that's what all masters said, whether you take Buddha, or whether you take Krishna, whether you take Christ. Any master who had discovered himself or herself said the same thing, That's the reason.
Yeah. One thing that I think many people probably struggle with, I know, is something that I deal with, is this notion of work-life balance. It's this idea that you can have it all. You can be successful with your personal endeavors, professional endeavors, be a good spouse, be a good parent, be a good son, be a good daughter. And I think people struggle with this. I think, sometimes you find, hey, this week I was a great dad, but I was terrible in the office, or something else. And then, something that a friend of mine, was joking with me last week because I keep telling him about, some of these questions I've been wrestling with. He says, all these people that you respect, the Buddha left his family to go study under a tree. This spiritual leader didn't have children. So can you have it all?
It's an interesting question which you've asked. Since you mentioned about Buddha, I want to
right,
say
like he
something.
left his family, right?
Yes, he did leave. But what's interesting is, when he went, he was Siddhartha. Buddha means the awakened one. So he got enlightened. After he got enlightened, he wanted to go back and meet his wife. His wife's name was Yashodhara. And they were equal in age and they were like great friends, right from early childhood. And when he went there, what happened is his own cousin was his disciple, and he had put a condition to Buddha before becoming his disciple. He was his elder brother. He said, after I become your disciple, before that I want to put certain conditions, because after I become your disciple, I can't put conditions. I've got to listen to you. So one of the conditions is that wherever you go, I'll be there. So when he went to meet his wife, he also came with him. And Buddha requested him, saying that I'm bound by my promise, but I left her in the middle of the night many years back, about 12 years back, and I'm going back to meet her, and she will be having a lot of anger inside her. So I've got to allow her to express, which you may not like. You may not like the way she'll talk to me. So we require a private moment. So he agreed and he went out. And the interesting part is, the moment Yashodhara saw Buddha, she started abusing him, literally. And all the anger came out. And Buddha, he was just quiet. He was peaceful. Actually, he was giving healing to her. Now, it's the same person who left his family. That's the only part of the story which people know. But he had so much of love and affection to go back to her. And after the whole thing was vented out, then she saw his calm face, that inner happiness was there. So then she said, okay, but one thing I should say is that you have found what you went for, what you went out to search for. And then she asked him, tell me one thing, would you say that you could have found whatever you found there, which was enlightenment, staying right here in the palace? And Buddha's answer was yes. And then she said, why did you leave? He said, the reason why I left was because that time I was ignorant. But now I know what I found there is here also. It's not outside. It is stilling of one's own mind. So probably during Buddha's days, teachers were not so much available, or why he left. I mean, it all depends, exactly what happened in his mind. But it's not a rule. There have been many masters who have stayed right in the world, who have lived a normal life, and who have been great saints. So it is not leaving the world or being in the world that really... Actually, where can you go, even if you leave the world?
Right.
Okay, you say, I go to Himalayas. That's also part of the world only. There is a scripture called Yoga Vasishta in Sanskrit. You must have heard of a character called Lord Rama in India. He was a great avatar, they call it. Avatar means one who was born enlightened, And when he was 16 years old, he went through a phase of depression because he was asking questions about what is life and what is the purpose of death and all that. Then his master, Vasishta, gave him the answers. He said, I want to leave the world. To which his master asked him, Rama, now where do you want to go? Why do you want to leave the world? He said, I want to experience God. He said, you mean to say God or divinity is not here and he is only there in the forest? It is not restricted there. You got to open up your third eye. You've got to open up your inner eye of wisdom. Then you will experience happiness. You will experience divinity right where you are, So this work-life balance, it's not only work and life. Actually, the great masters have divided life into 12 aspects. This is the ancient wisdom. Like 12 aspects means first aspect is health, second aspect is wealth, third aspect is relationship, family, fourth is career, like this, fifth is creativity, and one of the things is enjoyment also. How enjoyment itself is an art. Many people just rush through life, but they don't really enjoy. So like this 12 aspects, out of which the 12th aspect is spirituality, which is the center, I would say. It is not in an order, it's like a circle. So spirituality means going within, getting to know who you are, experiencing yourself, dropping all the conditionings. This topic today, he said, was investing in letting go. Letting go of your ego, letting go of all the negative impressions which you have stored in your life. That is what spirituality is all about. So once you invest your time, a little bit of your time at least, into going within, then automatically all the other aspects of life will be in perfect harmony and balance. So it is not merely work and life, you got to balance everything. Many people think that, in order to be spiritual, you got to be poor. The moment you deal with wealth, they think that's not spirituality. Then the life is imbalanced. So this is what even Buddha talked about. He said middle path. He said don't go to this extreme, don't go to that extreme also. If you stay in the middle path, that is what the real path is all about. That's quite interesting.
All right. Do you have bad days?
Sorry?
Do you have bad days?
Not really.
No?
No. I'm being very frank.
No, I know you are frank, but there's not a day where you feel stressed out or you're unkind to yourself?
See, I took this up very early when there was no stress. Generally, when we are children, we have no stress. Here, there is no child. If you bring a child here, he or she, you can't control, that cheer which they'll have. So at that time itself, I took up spirituality. Naturally, I had an inclination. So before the stress could come, the solution was already there. Probably that could be one of the reasons. But when you talk of bad days, it's very interesting. These are the good moods and bad moods which you're talking of. We have to probe a little further. Why is it that you go through the mood swings? Anyone? Why is it that sometimes you feel good? Sometimes you feel okayish. Sometimes you feel really terrible. Even if some positive thing is said, you are unable to react positively to it. There is a reason. See, whenever we go through experiences, what happens is after the experience is over, the experience does not end in our mind.
Right.
We go on reacting, especially when the experience is negative. Let's say, just for argument's sake, I insult you. Just an example.
Yeah.
Now,
I can't imagine you do that, but I'll roll with it.
Yeah, I'll never do that. So that's why it is a joke. Okay. So, so what happens is, okay, here people are there and all are watching you, so you may smile and you may try to wash it off. But after I go away from here, you will keep replaying it in your mind. And what we yogis have discovered, what they have found out, is that in the first 7 minutes, it goes to the first layer of the mind. Then in the first 7 hours, it goes to the next layer, 7 by 7, you know. Don't ask me why, that's how it's structured. So it goes inside you, and after a while, it goes and forms an impression, what we call as a psychic impression, in the deepest layer of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So once you are loaded with a lot of psychic impressions, see, right from young age, how many experiences each one goes through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all that is there. And if you can accommodate past births, then we're talking of thousands and thousands of experiences, probably millions of experiences.
I have a lot of questions about past births, but we'll save that.
So the entire luggage which we carry, so what inside our system, consciously we may not be aware of it. The conscious mind is only 4 to 5%. But I'm talking of the deeper aspect. So when that is loaded with a lot of impressions, that starts controlling your behavior, your moods, your habits, the way you react to people. You know, many a times, out of anger, you just say something, and then later on you feel that, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Now, who is telling you that? You yourself know.
Right.
But why is it coming without your control? It's because of the psychic impressions. What in Sanskrit they called as karmas, you know. Karmas means these impressions. So, the spirituality is a process by which we go within and clean ourselves up. Self-healing, you know. You completely throw away, drop all these impressions from your system. This is called prati prasav. Prati prasav means being born. Prati means again. It's a kind of a rebirth. Buddha called it jatak smaran. The great master Mahavira, he called it jati smaran. Every master used different words. Mm-hmm. But it means cleaning yourself of all the impressions. Now, once you do that, then you become like a newborn baby. You become so pure, innocent, happy. And that is when every day is your day. Mm-hmm. There is no question of a good day or bad day. No, it's your making. Mm-hmm. There's one thing which I really want to tell you and everyone. That is, happiness is a choice only. You know, we invest on so many, you're a master of investing. So you invest on so many things, but we don't basically invest in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that's why, that's where I come in actually.
Yeah. You know, one thing that you were talking about that was on my list, but I'm going to ask it earlier is, you know, in this environment we're in now, just take, for example, I won't go into any specifics, but let's say the political environment in the United States.
What environment?
Political. You know, there's people with differing views, and it's not uncommon for people to care a great deal and be passionate about these issues.
Yes.
So without going into a terrible rant, you know, I may find myself very triggered and very passionate about certain things that I think, you know, I'm not happy with certain things that are happening in the United States. There's this notion I find with meditation and Vipassana in particular around non-attachment, this idea of not being attached. And I have a hard time reconciling that idea with being like very passionate about something. If you want to be an activist in an area, let's say you have a very strong feeling about something and you want to see change and you want to act and work very hard towards that. How do you kind of synthesize the idea of non-attachment and bliss and this idea of wanting which I'm told also wanting is not
Wanting
something.
Wanting a change.
Right, and really working very hard and committing yourself to a certain cause or something you may believe in.
That's a very interesting thing which you've observed. Actually, this is the entire philosophy. You're asking me what, in other words, you're asking me what is the ancient wisdom, which took me a lifetime. You just simply just asked me like that. If
You have 10 minutes. It's not.
Sometimes the questions are short. See, I'll tell you something. If you take the Bhagavad Gita, for example, this was the question which, I don't know whether everyone is familiar with the Bhagavad Gita. It was a conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. It happened 5,000 years back, where in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna was a master and Arjuna was a seeker. It didn't happen in an ashram. Because we generally associate spirituality with ashrams and we think we have to change our places and all that. Now he asks the same question there. And incidentally, who is Arjuna? Arjuna was one of the greatest archers. Those days archery was famous. I don't think it's relevant anymore. But those days that was a warfare. He was a great warrior. Modern day equivalent would be any achiever in life. Like you. You know. So that was Arjuna. Now he was faced with a situation where he had to fight people who were unrighteous. He had to do his duty. But they were his relatives, some of them were his friends, relatives, but they were ruining the country. They were like wicked people. And Krishna said, you fight and you got to win. So he broke down. He broke down and said, I can't do this. How can you ask me to do this, something which is terrible? So 13 years he prepared for the war. He actually wanted to destroy unrighteousness. But when the actual situation came, now again he was unable to find this balance. So he directly asked Krishna this question. He said, at one point of time you're saying you got to act. On the other hand, you say you go and gain wisdom. You become happy. Now how do I combine these two? What is this you're talking about? Now the answer to this is that, see, when we talk of happiness, when we talk of peace, we are talking of an internal state. When we talk of action or correction or change, we are talking of external action. Today, since the mind is not under our own control, we are unable to separate these two.
Unable to.
Unable to separate action with attitude. Whereas when you invest some time in spirituality, when you really gain what I would call as self-mastery, then what happens is you're able to stay in a state of bliss and happiness and at the same time do all your actions. It doesn't matter which action it is. I'll give you a simple example. Did you drive or do you have a...
No, I flew from Boston.
Oh, you flew from Boston? No, here I'm talking.
Oh, I jumped in an Uber.
Okay. So when you drive, of course, I'm sure you drive, right?
Yes.
So when you drive a car, now initially, I want you to just go back, initial days when you were trying to learn car driving, it would have looked so complex. Of course, now it's all automatic, but those days it was like, you had the clutch and so you got to leave the clutch carefully and press accelerator and then gear is there. You can't do everything at one go. And especially if you've just learnt and you're driving, and if somebody talks to you, you can't answer them and drive.
Right.
You'll switch off the car probably and say, yes, what did you say? You'll say that. But the same person, once he becomes a master of driving, you can't really stop him from talking. Beyond a point, he may listen to music, he may do so many things, and yet he'll be able to drive. It's the same thing with spirituality also. in the initial stages, you will find a conflict. Either you act or you can be peaceful. That combination will be very difficult. But I am telling you from experience, it's possible. Once you get established in the state of happiness, see, when you're practicing, that's when all these problems arise. But once you get established, then you can do anything. Sometimes you may have to be stern outside. See, some people ask me, do you ever get angry? I said, if you ask my internal state, never. Never do I get angry. But sometimes, you may have to use the anger energy because that's a language which someone can understand for their own benefit. It's possible.
But you don't go to sleep angry.
Sorry?
You don't go to sleep angry.
No way.
Never.
That's the worst thing, you can do. To sleep, sleep is meant to relax. It's a nature's way of relaxing you.
Yeah.
And just before sleep, what all we sleep with? I don't know. So it's a very good question, and I would suggest that you continue in your path and get established. To the extent you're established, to the extent you'll be able to practice this. That's the key. The combination of action, external dynamism, and inner peace. You've got only one.
Yeah.
Either people are peaceful or they are dynamic and active.
Right.
Is there a technique
It's a
by
false
which
choice.
you can combine? Yes.
Yeah.
So is there a technique by which you can combine these two? Yes, it's possible.
All right. Is meditation without spirituality sufficient?
What do you mean by spirituality?
Well, there's at a few places that I've practiced meditation, it's characterized as secular Buddhism. So it's not with any teachings from the Pali. There's no.
Okay.
And I've heard some teachers say that meditation without spirituality is not helpful.
Yeah. It's a very good question actually, because in this context, I would also like to bring in a third factor called religion. Because most people today confuse religion with spirituality. So I'll cover the whole thing so that it becomes clear. What I teach is spirituality, not religion. So first of all, what is spirituality? Spirituality is not another subject to be learnt. Spirituality is a way of life. There is nothing called secular spirituality and non-secular. The moment it is non-secular, it is no longer spirituality. Spirituality means dealing with something which is non-material, the soul, whatever word you want to call, the infinite, divinity, God, any word you use. So becoming one with that is called spirituality. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit root yuj, which means to unite with the infinite. So what happened is, some of the masters, when they got enlightened and when they gave out the truth, each master gives the truth in his or her own way. So the followers formed a religion around the masters. But if you per se take the master, he didn't belong to the religion. Buddha was not a Buddhist. Followers of Buddha may call themselves Buddhists. Christ was not a Christian. The followers of Christ, they may call themselves Christian. Krishna was never a Hindu. There is no word Hindu in the entire Bhagavad Gita or the Vedas and all that. But the followers may call themselves Hindus. But these masters were completely secular. Because the moment we talk of God or infinite means there is no limit. There is no finiteness to it. So it is all inclusive. So I'm assuming from what you've asked me, it looks like you're talking about religion, which is mixed up with spirituality today. That's why you're using the word spirituality, So once this becomes clear, spirituality is just a way of life. It's not in the dress which we wear. Everywhere I go, the first thing they ask me is, so you're only Yogishri, is it? Yes. You're the, they said Himalayan master and all that. I said, I think so. then where is your beard? This is what they are unable to accept. The first thing they think is, in order to be a master or an enlightened, you need to have a beard. You need to wear some strange attire, something or other. You cannot be normal.
Yeah.
So this is not it. That is not spirituality. So once we understand what spirituality is, then meditation and spirituality go hand in hand. You can use any word you want, So when you're here, sitting here, it does not matter which religion you belong to. It does not matter whether you're a man or a woman or what. I'm talking from a spiritual point of view. All that matters is, do you have a mind? The word man or a woman is derived from, they say, the Sanskrit root man. Some research people have found out, and I was reading that article, very interesting. Man means the mind. So it's only a human being who has the potential to discover and leash out the full potential, the infinite powers of the mind. So that's what spirituality is concerned about. And meditation is the key. Is the key by which you unleash your infinite potential from within. And as I said, it is not a practice. Actually, when you go to a master, automatically you become meditative. It's a energy transfer. It happens naturally. So
it's not lost on me that you're blissful and wearing white, and I'm, asking a lot of questions and wearing dark, and my hair is gray and your hair is black. But I'm gonna just leave that there. Excellent. You've mentioned this a few times, but I just want to, I don't know if others have this question, but I would like to ask this question, which is, does God exist?
Again, I have a question for you. Before I answer that, what do you mean by God?
Is there a creator?
So according to you, God means creator.
I guess that would be one way of thinking about it, but correct, that would be my question.
Okay. See, why I asked you what do you mean by God is, because long back, an Australian asked me same question, does God exist? And I straight away started answering. And then he was referring to one particular God whom he had read about, in a book. So when we use the word God, it looks very mystical. We generally think that God is somewhere above in the heavens, somewhere beyond us. And one day we need to reach that person. We generally think God is a person, first of all. It's interesting. We are a group of human beings sitting here, we're discussing about God. So our conception of God will be exactly like a human only. We'll give him, probably instead of 2 hands, we've got to make God a superpower. So we may give God 10 hands, or 10 legs. But let us say a group of lions were sitting here and discussing about who is God. How do you think they portray God? As a lion only.
Right.
So that itself shows that what we are thinking as God is actually our own creation only. But when you go to the ancient wisdom, all the scriptures and all that, if you go to the core of the scriptures, I'm not talking of the superficial way, part, but when you get to the real core of any scripture, what the master is trying to communicate is that God is inside you. It is that supreme infinite power. And the moment we say infinite, infinite means that which is not conceivable by the intellect. See, science actually deals with the known and unknown. Known is whatever you know. Unknown is something which you don't know today, but you can always know it in the future. Now, spirituality is actually not against science. Spirituality says there are 3 things. One is the known, second is the unknown, and the third is what it calls as unknowable with your intellect. So with the intellect we can know the mysteries of the universe because it's objective. But that supreme power is the one which caused the intellect itself. So with the light, of this bulb, you can see everything, it can illumine everything. but it cannot illumine the wires which are running inside it, the batteries, because that is what is causing it. So God is that supreme power which is there right within you. Actually, the highest truth, if you really want me to say, it's called Tat Tvam Asi. Tat means that. Tvam means you. Asi means are. That supreme God you are. If I would ask you who are you, you'll give me a visiting card. Probably you may not be carrying it now. That's what you told me there. But you say, I am Bijan. That's your answer. But then that's only your name. And when you say, I am Bijan, you're referring to your body. You're referring to your finite personality. But what we yogis discovered is when you go deep, deep within and drop off everything which you know, drop your finiteness completely, you think you'll be nothing, but actually you become the infinite. You become one with that source, So God as a creator is, I would say, a kindergarten kind of a conception. Because we always see a watch, there's a watchmaker, there's a table maker. Oh, this world is there, therefore there is a world maker. And then we start complaining about that world maker. That's the ultimate aim,
Right.
Ultimately, because that God will never fight against us. So we go on saying. But it is not so superficial like that. So even to call it the supreme power, because words fall short, there is a saying by a great siddha in South India. There's a language called Tamil. I don't know whether you've heard of it. It's an ancient language like Sanskrit. He says, Kandavar Vindilar Vindavar Kandilar, which means one who has seen cannot talk. One who is talking has not seen. About that. So even when I'm saying this, what I've experienced, I can never put it in words because words are very gross. Gross, it can't reach.
Yeah.
So if you really want to know the answer to that, I would say come for my program.
All right.
Make you experience it. Because it's an experience. It cannot be talked about beyond a certain extent. I can give you pointers.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Because I am used to always answering. I thought this is great. Why did you accept this? I mean, what made you come here for this conversation?
It was one of those, I was very grateful to even be asked. And then when I heard that, it was an opportunity to sit down with you and have a very open conversation, it was very timely. It was, all these things in the last few years I've been very curious about, investigating, searching. As I mentioned at the beginning, I think the first 10 or 15 years of my adult life I was running on autopilot. And in the last 10 years, 5 years in particular, I've been somewhere between struggling and having moments of clarity. And any given day it is in one of those areas. I'm very grateful on one hand, but I'm also, there's a constant searching at this point.
Oh, that's really great. Actually, I appreciate it because, when you achieve something in life, that's when you start searching, because you started out with some motive in order to become happy. And as long as we don't achieve it, it's impossible to convince a person that happiness is not there. But once you get a hang of it, then when I say happiness is inside, it goes in straight, That's something which I generally appreciate.
Yeah. Maybe we can invite members of the audience to ask questions or participate, Tim?
That's very generous of you.
All right.
Learning. Because generosity is really the act of really great humanity, I feel. So we've got microphones on either side of the house, and if you raise your hand, Elizabeth, we've got a question right at the back, so why don't you whiz back there? And just make the questions as succinct as you can manage, so that we can have more time to share out. Thanks so much. Hello.
Yep, thank you. This is Ryan. You mentioned happiness is a choice and to invest in yourself. what kind of things would you be doing as we all progress on a spiritual path?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you clearly.
I'm happy to repeat. So you said happiness is a choice. So what should we all be doing in preparing ourselves for a spiritual path? Is that a fair summation?
Yeah. See, actually, spirituality is not about doing. Because throughout our lives, we want to do something. We want to become something. And that's the actually root cause of the problem. And we never are happy because of that. Spirituality is not about doing or becoming. It is about being. Just being whatever you are. And that is what is meditation. So when we talk of the spiritual path, from a relative sense, there is a path, there is a goal, and you have to reach the goal and all that. But in the real sense of the term, there is no path, there is no goal. It is right now, this moment, If what you are, that is the reality. See, we are so used to living in the past, or we live in the future. But right now, whatever you are is the reality. Probably, if time permits, I don't know, towards the end, I can give an experience to everyone, 5 minutes or something, a meditation. So at that time, as when the energy is invoked, when energy flow starts, when the moment I say relax, you will find your mind relaxing. All your stress will go away. And that's when you come to face yourself. This is a practice which you need to do every day. And I have created some material also, some audio CDs. It's called The Ancient Science of Yoga Sankirtan, which is a very, very powerful, I wouldn't call it a method because meditation is not a method, but it's a powerful process where we use sound vibrations to go within and discover ourselves. This has been a secret of the Himalayas, but for some reason I've got the higher inspiration to reveal it to people. So I have made those audio material, and what I would suggest is probably you can get hold of them, but you got to invest at least 1 or 2 hours for yourself in a day. If you say I don't have time for that, then it's impossible, Preferably in the early hours of the morning. I would say preferably, if you can do that meditation every day, that will really, really take you deep within. It will expose what you are, that infinite which is there within you, And thereafter comes the practice of this ancient wisdom in your day-to-day living, in every aspect of life. So for that, I do have these weekly sessions which happens in India, and now they have started doing the live streaming of that also. It happens every Sunday there, which means I think it will be Saturday evening here. So you can get hold of that and start watching it. So then slowly the path will also get set. See, it is not like a black and white thing. We are so used to that kind of thing. But spirituality is about discovery. So you just make a start, and then I'm sure nature will guide you.
Thank you for that guidance. Yes, we've got a question right there, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Where are you?
Over here.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible for stress and the peace of mind to coexist if you are driven to action and basically end up in situations where you're under a lot of pressure and need to perform? Do you think it's possible to do that and sort of act in a detached manner while inevitably experiencing stress?
Yes. See, it's a very interesting question, because we were discussing about action, dynamism, and inner peace. See, it's possible to combine action with peace. Now, but before that, we need to remove certain misconceptions. That is, we strongly believe that action causes stress. Even from your question itself, that's implied. Everyone thinks that the moment we act, now we have to get stressed. Action itself causes stress. Action tires me out. That's a general concept which people have. But actually, action does not stress you out. It is your mind which stresses you out. I'll give you an example. I was talking about children. Supposing or I'll give you something which happened to me long back. A man came to me and he said, I'm highly depressed. I said, who are you? And he gave me about 10 visiting cards. He was owning some 10 companies, different parts of the world and this, that. I said, Acha, you got all this, fine. So he said, but I don't have any energy left at all in life. And what should I do? So then I asked him, tell me, in your home, do you have anyone who is full of energy? And he said, first of all, me. No, I've come to you. That's why I've come to you. I have no energy. And my wife is there. She does have a lot of energy, but we both quarrel a lot, So that time she becomes very energetic. And that energy also I don't have, even to fight with her. And then he went on saying, he was a very humorous person also. And finally, I asked him, what about your children? He had a 5-year-old son. And the moment I asked him about his son, his eyes brightened, He said, yes, that fellow, impossible to control him. Full of energy, full of cheer, no stress whatsoever. Actually, I get stressed by just seeing him jump. I'm sitting on a sofa and he keeps jumping. And I'm tired, he's not tired. So, my question to all of you is, which I asked him also. I asked him, how much do you eat? He frankly said, I eat so much. And how big are you? How much does your boy eat? So little. How tall is he? Just this much. Isn't it a paradox? You're eating so much, you say, I'm tired, I have no energy. And here he is not even eating anything, and he says he's full of energy, cheer, no stress whatsoever. So, I'm asking you all the same question which I asked him. What is the secret of energy and enthusiasm in a child?
They're living in the moment.
In other words, a child does not have any worries of the past. There's no worries whatsoever. The child does not have any anxieties for the future also. Absolutely. Just lives moment to moment. Actually, we were also naturally spiritual when we were children. All of you were very, free of stress. But as we grow, our so-called education system, on one hand we feel, we have gained a lot of knowledge, but actually we have gathered we have gathered a lot of stress. So, this is the secret of a child, and that's a secret of any master, any yogi. He just lives in the moment. It is not the action which tires you, but it is the mind. They conducted an experiment where a heavyweight champion, they put a heavyweight champion and a child of 5 in a room, and they told the heavyweight champion that you need to do everything what the child does for the next 6 hours. He said, fine, what's the big deal? And first child was there, he was doing like this, he also did this, and he did this, he went on, And then slowly the child started doing some somersaults. So he did for a while. After about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, he started pleading with the people who were performing this experiment, He said, please take me out of this room. I can't bear 6 hours. Impossible. But after 1 hour, the child was still energetic, full of activity, jumping. So much of activity the child is doing. So this is the secret. If we learn to master our own mind, still our own mind, then you can be extremely dynamic outside. That is the symbolic meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. It was given in the battlefield. You know, those of you who have a background of Bhagavad Gita, number one, it was given in a battlefield. Number two, what was Krishna's role? Lord Krishna's role? He was a charioteer. See, the warrior was standing on the chariot, and Lord Krishna, who was a master, he was his charioteer. He took up that role, which is the most dangerous job to do, the most dangerous work, because the opponent's weapons will first have to pass Krishna and then only go. So if he doesn't defend properly, he's finished. But if I were to ask you to just imagine a picture of Lord Krishna, what expression comes to your mind? Huh?
Blue.
Joy, smile. You'll never find a photograph or a picture of Christ or Krishna or any master like this. That means the artist, he's projecting his mind. It's impossible. So the message which is being given, even in the Bhagavad Gita, is that you can be even in the midst of the battlefield, and yet you can be calm and composed. It's a science, it's an art which you need to master. That may take a little while, but it's definitely possible. I would suggest, as I was telling him, you start practicing the Yoga Sankirtan which I was referring to, and people who have practiced it for a few weeks, few months, they say that the base level of the mental calmness starts coming down. Because the real test of meditation is not when your eyes are closed, but when your eyes are open and when you're interacting in the world. Are you able to carry the same poise with you? That is the real test now.
Thank you. Who else would like to ask a question? Hello. Right here, thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you both. It's a pleasure to listen to both of you speak. I have a question for each of you. Bijan, I was more curious about your trajectory in meditation and what your revelations have been thus far, also in terms of whether the meditative process has informed and further fueled your materialistic ambitions, or have you found yourself feeling apathetic and disconnected from them? And Yogishri, I wanted to ask you about choice. Tonight you've clearly mentioned that the key is to go inward, and we in every moment have a choice to align ourselves and position ourselves and orient ourselves inward, and maybe to virtues over vices. How do we stay connected on that path, knowing intellectually that that is the right thing to do, but continuing to face an assault to our senses, living in modern society where we are continuously distracted by various stimuli and a cruel sort of texture? How do we choose to stay? And it's just sort of what's connecting us to that why, and how do we sustain it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
See, the thing is, you said the modern society. Actually, there is another misconception that thousands of years back there were no challenges. It's never been like that. Imagine, just for argument's sake, we are not in a civilized city. We are all cave people, cave men and cave women. You think there would be no challenges? Actually, there would be more challenges because we need to protect ourselves from wild animals. And see, now it's very cold outside. All of you are just wearing a jacket and you're coming. But in those days, there was nothing like that. So challenges were always there, but it's just that the nature of challenges were different. So it's nothing special that the modern life alone is more stressful and all that. That is number one. So what was applicable then is applicable now also in terms of the higher wisdom. The second thing is, see, in this rat race of life, we completely lose ourselves. So we need to change it a little bit. When I was, I just came here, I came to US yesterday evening. And when I was coming here, I was watching, both sides. I was coming from New Jersey. It drove me. And at what speed, the cars were just whizzing past. And it was very interesting to watch that. Where are they going? I really don't know. They're just running. Now, in this rat race, as soon as we wake up in the morning, our routine starts. Before we think, we don't even think what we ought to do. What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? So the path starts with first asking yourself these questions. What is my purpose of life? Why was I born? What is death? If you are not worried about what is death, at least, when you see death happening everywhere, then one day you're also going to die. So where will I go? So when you start asking these questions, that is when you will get that urge to allocate some time for yourself. I did mention to that gentleman when he asked me, I said, preferably in the early hours of the morning, do that. But what would be the motivation for a person to do that? Unless and until you ask these fundamental questions, you will be in the rat race of life. So you need to allocate at least 1 or 2 hours for yourself. I told you 12 aspects of life are there. One aspect is you, spirituality. So you've got to allocate that. And at that time, you need to practice what in Sanskrit we call as sadhana. Sadhana means a spiritual practice which helps you to master yourself. And why I am suggesting Yoga Sankirtan? Because it's one of the most powerful processes, So unless and until you do that, it is impossible that you will be able to carry forward that peace throughout the day. See, we are not even creating it. When a challenge comes in front of us, our mind is not today under our control to choose. Before we choose, the impressions, as I told you, which is there stored within us, they are making us react in a particular way. So we need to spend a certain amount of time. Don't you have a bath every day? You're not saying yes. I mean, okay, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's 100% yes.
See, please don't get me wrong, I always keep pulling people's leg again, because life should be full of fun and frolic. I hate too many, serious discussions. Because today life has become so serious, especially board meetings. I would suggest you should start with jokes, If nothing else, play a Charlie Chaplin, laugh and then start. It's very important. So we clean our bodies, we brush our teeth, we have a bath, we wash our clothes, all that. But what is there inside? Do we wash our own minds? No, we don't even spend 1 minute for that. So when on a Sunday, when you're alone, you have nothing to do, what do? Immediately you take up your cell. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying what's happening. You go for a walk. Earlier, at least they used to enjoy the walk and they'll go. But now nobody enjoys a walk also. They're talking over the phone and they're walking. That too shouting at someone and walking, What do you mean? And then they're walking. So we are constantly, we don't give time for ourselves at all. And when I ask people, why do you do that? They say, oh, I'm so bored. I asked them, you're bored with whom? You're bored with yourself. When you are bored with yourself, how can you expect others to find you interesting, So we need to, so whenever you get some time, just try to be without all this and just focus on your breathing. I'm giving you a tip, Just focus on because breathing is a reality. It's happening right now. And the moment you do that, you will find a lot of thoughts coming. Don't try to resist those thoughts because those impressions are coming out. And every day about an hour or so do that Yoga Sankirtan. Within 3 to 6 months, you will find that your mind will start becoming more and more silent. And that is when, whether your senses take you this side, whether someone comes and insults you, there is a financial crisis, now they're talking of recession. But I've been hearing this recession for more than 25, 30 years, periodically, So something or other keeps coming. But you'll find that you don't react. Rather, you'll start choosing your response. Because I did say that you have a choice of action. Actually, a human being alone has his choice of action. But that is something which needs to be awakened. It is only through these processes it can be awakened. So there are no shortcuts. I don't know what you expected. Because today is a day of instant coffee, instant tea. So some people ask me, can you give me instant enlightenment? I say it's impossible. There are no shortcuts. Anybody who promises shortcuts is not a master. Remember that. So you give it some time and keep practicing. Slowly you will find that your mind becomes silent.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question, and this speaks to Bijan's earlier point about addressing who we're really going to be if we live without attachment. And my question's about social recreation. And as we continue to maybe become more refined in our thinking, for lack of a better word, it almost feels like sometimes we're leaving people behind, and the level of engagement that we have with others in a social ecosystem, it kind of becomes maybe a little bit fragmented, and relatability becomes questioned because you want to engage at a certain level, at this level perhaps, because you've tapped into it. But not everyone's receptive to engaging at that level. And perhaps as you go deeper, you crave it more, and you can no longer engage in a superficial way anymore. And that causes a bit of a cost to your relationships with others. And Bijan, I'm curious as to what you think about that as well.
Well, you asked an earlier question about whether, Bijan, in your process of meditation, you then either become disengaged or disenchanted with the material gain that you have heretofore been quite successful in acquiring. So maybe we can address both those together.
Yeah. For me, material gain, I'm trying my best to be intellectually honest about your question. I think it's a good one, but it started out as just making sure that my wife and children weren't going to starve. It was like a blind motivation for making sure everyone was okay, and then it probably evolved into ambition, lack of a better word, to try to be to perform it as best as I possibly could, and that led to a lot of unintended consequences. But I think the meditation for me has been challenging, especially in the beginning, because of this drive to be this. And I think many people have this experience, or at least people that I've talked to with meditation, is you start getting into this voice in your head of like, I'm doing it wrong, I suck at this, I'm terrible at this, why did I even start this? What difference does it make? And so that that story plays on and on, at least with me. So the first few years, I've been meditating for about 5 years now. It really picked up in 2016 when the election went the other way. But but I think just being kinder to myself was a big part of it, and that I think was a bit of a moment of a positive change, at least. But I think the thing that I do wrestle with, which is why I asked the question, is this notion of trying to maintain some level of peace and then this drive to like really make a change. I think it's hearing some tragedy that's happening in our country and then going to bed with bliss is hard. It's been very hard. So there are some days that's better than others through some moment of accidental wisdom or something. But often it's there's this list next to my bed and I'm writing it out and I got a list for tomorrow.
I think we could talk about the impact of meditation and the connection with the infinite all night if we wanted to. But Yogishri said something very important, that it's not an intellectual pursuit, this thing called spirituality. It's an experience. And I think it might be beautiful to allow ourselves a little time to have an experience and just register something of the process that Yogishri transmits so powerfully. So we'll want to do that. But first, I did mention something about giving, which I feel is really the height of human endeavor. And we'd like to give Bijan and Yogishri 2 offerings from the Rubin Museum as a thank you for coming out and sharing their experiences with us. So, of course, you know, we're in an art museum, so what they're going to do, we're going to get art catalogues for them, aren't we? But hopefully of some significance to the participants. What I didn't explain in my introduction to Bijan Sabet is that he's actually a rather dynamic photographer whenever he can take the time to be so. And he's, I think, taking increasing time to be so, I think, from what I've read. But we've just opened an exhibition by a really remarkable personality who doesn't think of himself necessarily as a photographer, but as an activist. His name is Shahidul Alam. And he spent part of last year in prison, courtesy of the Bangladeshi government, because they didn't like what he said and how he portrayed it. And we have an exhibition of his on the 5th floor, which I hope you go and visit, because it's very, very powerful. And it speaks to the need to have voices both seen and heard. And so this book, Shahidul Alam, The Tide Will Turn, is not available in this country except here. And so, Bijan, I hope you want to go home with this.
Thank you so much.
As an
Very kind of you.
Rubin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For
Appreciate
coming
it.
out and
Thank
asking
you.
those beautiful questions.
Thank you very much.
For Yogishri, of course, he will appreciate the richness of our collection and the teachings that are inherent in the art form. You have to understand, Himalayan art is not actually technically art at all. It's a tool, a transmission, a vehicle by which we can understand our relationship to everything there is. And so we have collected some of the highlights from the collection and offer them to Yogishri for thanking you to come here to the Rubin to give us your experiences and sharing them out. Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us on Facebook Live. Stay with us for a moment of contemplation, if you will. And that's how we're going to leave this session, with this experience. And then see what happens when you go out into that joyous world called New York City. We wish you all the resilience in the world. Thank you. Yogishri?
So how much time do we have?
Maybe 5 to 7 minutes.
Oh, 7 minutes for enlightenment. Okay, no, definitely not. Because generally my warming up time itself takes about a while, you know. So we'll straight away then, if you can just switch off your cell phones at my request. Because, see, there are so many secrets. And when we invoke the higher energy, what happens is that causes a lot of healing. So today, since we have very less time, we'll straight away get into the experience. So if you can just sit with a straight back, as straight as possible, in a very relaxed way. Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. Deep, but in a very, very relaxed way. let go of everything and just become like a child and focus on your breathing. Inhale deeply. And exhale completely. With every breath, I am becoming more and more relaxed. Each and every part of my body is completely relaxed. With every breath, I am going deeper and deeper into myself. I am not this body. The body is outside me. I am not the various emotions and thoughts. These are all happening outside me. I am the silent observer. That infinite consciousness. I am not this body. I am not these emotions. I am not these thoughts. I am that I am. That supreme infinite consciousness. I am filled with infinite bliss and happiness. Slowly come back. Let your consciousness come back slowly. Wriggle your fingers, wriggle your toes. Rub both your palms together to create a warmth. And make a cup with your palms and cup your eyes. Gently rub your cheeks, your eyes, forehead, top of the head, back of your head, neck. Very, very slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So you all went into deep silence. Time was very short. But didn't you all experience that? It's interesting. You know, from here you can have a view, but then you're also in that state. Thing is that you can see the thought frequency has reduced. Can you see from their expressions? All are looking as if you're blank like this, you know what I'm talking about. I can't leave you out like this. You've got to drive your car. So that's why So meditation is something which happens very naturally. And we yogis have discovered that. And when the energy is transferred, when it's invoked, effortlessly you just go off. So for those of you who are more interested, do get to this. I think there is some, this trip, I have one more session tomorrow, which is going to be a 1-hour meditation session. Austin, Jiva Mukti Yoga, he has organized that. It's going to be an informal session where 1.5 hours self-healing experience I'm going to give people. So those are interested come. After that, of course, I'm going to Columbus. Then MIT and Stanford have invited me, so I'm going there. Students there also are interested in meditation. I'm quite happy that youngsters are getting to it, you know. We all should react. Otherwise, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.